Bishop McAllister College started in 1983 when the diocese was under the first bishop, Yoram Bamnova, and I started it as one of the College for Tertiary Studies institutions that had started in the diocese. There were 4, and those schools were started to respond to the great need that arose from students who were finishing senior 4 and could not go to other institutions, either because of finances or even after senior 6, because the universities were still limited. So Bishop McAllister College was one of them, and it started as a music academy. And basically it was to teach students who would come out and get knowledge in church music, and some of them would go to boost music in the church or in the churches wherever they were coming from, basically Anglican Church of Uganda. And with time, they decided to attract the youth who were finishing senior 4 to come and do their HSC on the hill, so that they could learn from the people who were being trained to be clergy and other ministers in the church, but they can also take that path. So it started as an HSC school, and eventually, because the church didn't have enough money to keep paying for the clergy, so the number was decreasing with time, and the diocese saw a very great need to start O-level. It was kind of a miracle that Canon Paul Geoffreys came in as a volunteer from Canada, and that changed the whole thing.
I came to Jodera in 1998. I was coming to teach theology and had promised 2 years for that time. That was 20 years ago. The school wasn't in great shape. Most of the buildings were basically old mud buildings that had been plastered. There were a few students at that time, mainly theology. Buildings were poor. I found staff demoralized. They hadn't been paid in maybe 4 or 5 months. So the school was not in great shape, and in fact it was at risk of being closed. And towards the end of that first year in 1998, Bishop Mugambo came at that time to discuss with senior advisors from the diocese and archdeacons whether or not the school should be closed. So much to my surprise at that time, the decision was actually made to address a greater need, that instead of closing, they would open a secondary school. And what impressed me most was the tremendous faith they had in the face of these obstacles and struggles, because I would have voted close the school, the financial picture being what it was. So in 1999 we opened with Senior 1, which in the West is grade 8, with about 30 students, and so we began. But within 6 months of that, a storm destroyed our mud classrooms, and we had to find faith and a way forward. So we started slowly trying to build a classroom as each year joined. And now as you look around, the school goes from Senior 1 to Senior 6. There are about 15 new classrooms for the students. We started with 30. Today there are 1,000 students in the school. It goes from years 1 to 6 in the secondary and grades 5 to 7 in the primary. So we're no longer a small place. So when we began this school year, as we do every year, we review the performance of the previous year. And at that stage, we always look at, what can we do differently within our limited means? And so, there's always the issue of lack of textbooks, even getting access to the books, science materials, updating computers. How do we help the students? Now, in some ways, the school, despite all that it lacks, has succeeded. We rank second and third in the local district and do well in the country overall. So as we began this year and we're looking at things we might do, we said, let's be very focused and serious about what would logically improve academics. Like all local schools, we have a library. Well, that's a local term, because what it means is the smallest room in the school where you guard your books, right, and protect them. So it doesn't provide ready access to books. The books are few, shared by far too many. And so basically students do not rely on that at all. So we began to look at this library project. Now I'll be honest, it's the biggest project we've ever attempted. It is a daunting project. It won't come in less than 500 million shillings. And that school has never built a project like that before. But we still believed that this was essential. So the library is a multifaceted project in what we want to achieve. Right? If you visited this school over the years, you would find most students lacking anywhere to read. So in good weather, they can find a place on the lawn someplace, or maybe there's an empty classroom that isn't too noisy. But still, it's not a good environment for just studying alone. One achievement in the new library is that the second floor will be a study hall, supervised, and that it will accommodate around 400 students at any given time to read. But the down floor, the first level, the main section of the library, we want to be a genuine library. Yes, it will house textbooks, making them accessible to students, but it will also house supplementary books to go along with the subject where students can do research. It'll also have books that are not related to education. One of the things we hope to develop when we have a really strong staff of English teachers is to really over time help our students embrace a reading culture that doesn't exist.
Yeah, the reading culture, generally, even in this country, Uganda, is poor. And as a passionate, reader, I'm a love of books, and as a person who loves to read, I feel so much challenged. I feel unhappy with my learners not being able to get a book and read. So they are really struggling, but I've done a lot. I'm trying my best to make sure that the students can learn to read, whether they have exams or whether they have been challenged. I want the people to catch the reading bug.
And so in the library, we also want to give children, so in downstairs there'll be seating areas just to encourage people to come and read the newspaper or to come and read a book for pleasure. My greatest joy, I swear, in my retirement will be, not an OB of your generation or old student, but one of this generation will say to me, I discovered the pleasure of reading at Choljara, and now I read just for the joy of it. That's what we want to achieve.
The more frequently they read, the easier it is for them, for example, to interact with the text in an examination. They get quicker through it because they've been used to that. So they are really doing that, and I believe the culture is going to grow. And I'm determined to make sure everyone reads, because I review at the end of the week. At the end of every week, I get back to see what every person has read at the end. So I believe that will get me a good culture.
But also in this library, there will be a real librarian with staff. We also hope to introduce an electronic section where students can access tablets. not to remove from the library, but to use there, whether it's reading a book or accessing the local newspapers. There's no question, even in Uganda with the internet improving all the time, e-reading and e-learning sources are definitely a part of the future when books are unaffordable. So all of those things we're considering in this new facility.
I do thank the director, headmaster, for the plan that they're having for us, and they're going to build for us the library.
That library that they are constructing will be useful to the seminarians and the upper school.
The construction is going to be of a great advantage for us students and even for the school administration. It will help us, of course, it will help students to expand their knowledge as they read, because they will be having enough space to read from, and this will increase on their academic performance, and it will make us compete with other big schools, as of course we are looking forward to soaring to great heights.
This project is 500 million shillings. That's about 185,000 Canadian dollars, 140,000 US dollars. So it's not a simple amount of money. But let me put it in perspective. We have already put 20% in less than 6 months. So we're encouraged, we're excited. But there are challenges ahead. So the next phase is what we call the suspended ceiling or floor. And it's almost 30% of the entire cost of the building. But the suspended slab has to be done in a go. So as we move forward, we look for funding sources from 3 sources: students and donors, and most recently, we now look to the Old Student Association. Now this is brand new, because we knew our old students were still relatively young, right? Just finishing education, just establishing careers, getting married, starting young families, and so surplus isn't easy. And also it's no longer one person making the decision to make a donation, it's 2 people who share the responsibility. But when we announced this library program, the first people to address it were 2 students, former students, living outside the country. One who lives in Europe and one who lives in Kenya. And they sent immediately substantial pledges, which they have already cleared. And so that encouraged me then to say, it's now time to start talking to the old students. And I think what encouraged me was, it was completely a positive response from day one. And so now we look to that 3rd group, the old students. And I think in some ways, recognizing that the old students have a role to play and they are willing to play it, encourage us to take on daunting projects like the library.
I'm a teacher of science, and I know how it is. Take an example of mathematics. A student might not learn from class, but at least if they get ample time in the library and read these textbooks and, you know, pamphlets like those, they can at least understand. So surely the library is going to improve on the performances of the school. With this project of the new library, then which can accommodate more than 500 students at a go, that would be a great add and a great boost to the studies of the students. I appeal to all the students, those who have pledged and those who have not yet pledged, to do so and honor our pledges, and we have the work go on without any hurdles and any struggles.
even have to say that some old boys have been good enough already. I remember I have some 10 books from some old boys. Betray You in the City, they gave me 10 copies. And if I would get, rather if I got any other old boys contributing in that way, I know our library would get very big, would be more resourceful than all these other libraries around.
I'm hoping over the next 5 to 10 years the school will stop growing. That it'll simply cap its enrollment and concentrate on building a top-notch school, improving salaries, and just be completely focused on academic performances. I'll be honest, we've cut extracurricular activities seriously this year. Some will reintroduce, but our concern is that all students benefit from whatever programs are in the school. So as we move forward, we want to have that sort of combination of, head, heart, right, and hands sort of things. But because we recognize that young people as well as old people, yes, we need that mental activity and that learning, but we also need physical to address our health needs, and we also need spiritual, which is a big part of what this school engages in. So over the next 10 years, I'd like us to be one of the best schools in Western, knowing its roots and what it's about. This school, let's have no doubt, is based solidly in faith in Christ. Everything we've achieved here has come from above, and we never forget that. And so we don't want to forget our roots. We don't want to abandon the discipline of the school, whether it's behavioral or academic. We want to build on this. And so I think if the staff that are now here continue to remain here and we build on their faithfulness and their dedication, this school is going to shine. Even though in many people's eyes it's shining, it can still improve. And so that's what we want. Good facilities where students are living in a positive learning environment, where there isn't a constant feeling of lacking, and that every possible academic resource is there for both teachers and students, and that we have a well-rounded program for them that involves extracurricular and spiritual development.